We're in a classic bull market setup, the kind that has sent altcoins flying in previous cycles. But this time, the macro environment is very different. Relying only on past cycle data could be risky. I've gone through all the current technicals and macro trends to figure out whether these alt-season signals are legit or just another round of hopium that traps people into buying altcoins at the worst time. In this video, we'll break down the most talked about indicators that are hinting at the start of an alt season. I'll share my honest take on whether they actually hold weight or are just noise. And towards the end, I'll reveal the key indicators I'm watching right now that suit this unique cycle and show you the exact alt season timeline along with the best windows to exit your altcoin positions. If you're someone who values rare, data-backed insights that most people aren't paying attention to, make sure to smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets us keep bringing you deeper analysis. And of course, subscribe if you haven't already. Let's dive in. As Bitcoin kept pushing higher while altcoins bled against it, the word alt season started to sound like a meme. But now, with Bitcoin breaking above its all-time high in a massive breakout, altcoins are starting to pop again and market sentiment is turning risk-on. One of the most talked about indicators right now is the Altseason index, which you've probably seen all over crypto Twitter. If you've been in the space for a while, you already know about it. We've discussed it on this channel a few times before. Currently, bullish posts are celebrating its move above 25, which marks Bitcoin's season. For it to officially enter alt-season territory, it needs to break above 75. So is this just hype, or is there real substance behind the excitement? Personally, I think the index breaking above 35 is a strong bullish signal for altcoins. There are two main reasons for this: historical trends and the current favorable regulatory developments. Historically, every time the alt-season index dropped to around 11 and then jumped above 35, altcoins have rallied hard. We've seen it blast past 35 and quickly enter full alt-season mode before. Especially in post-halving years, these bounces have triggered alt-seasons that lasted for months. Such rallies often push the index above 85, which is usually a good time to start taking some profits off the table. However, it's not necessarily a signal to fully exit all positions since the index can stay elevated for months. We saw this play out in both 2017 and 2021 when it remained above 85 for nearly 3 months, delivering massive gains. While historical data supports the alt-season index as a strong trigger, another big factor this time is regulatory progress. The crypto market pumped on Wednesday after President Donald Trump said he expects the House to pass the Genius Act. This act would allow private companies to issue stablecoins, something big traditional finance players like JP Morgan are already looking to capitalize on. It was a huge catalyst for ETH, which jumped from $3,000 to $3,400. Naturally, many ETH beta plays followed and most altcoins saw solid gains. The index still has some way to go before it breaches 75 and officially enters alt-season territory. I shared a quick update about this on X yesterday, so if you want time-sensitive, data-backed analysis in real time, make sure to follow us there. The link is in the description. Moving on to the next indicator, Bitcoin dominance. This one is Ben's favorite. I've seen several influencers getting hyped about its recent drop. You see posts saying Bitcoin dominance is crumbling, and it makes you think it must have fallen into the 50s at least. But when you check the chart, it's still sitting around 62%. Sure, it has had 3 weekly red candles, and the 4th is likely to close red as well. That hasn't happened since 2022, so yeah, it's something to cheer after its brutal march towards that 70% level. But 4 red candles aren't enough to call this a convincing reversal. Back in 2020, we saw dominance drop during July and August from similar levels around 60. But then it pumped back up to 70% by December before finally reversing and collapsing under 40 by May. There's a chance we see something similar this time too. This is just a bearish scenario speculation for now. On the positive side, with all the current regulatory clarity and institutional interest in top altcoins, things are looking supportive overall. But I still wouldn't say Bitcoin dominance is giving a clear alt-season signal just yet. Another chart that always comes up in alt-season discussions is the ETH BTC pair. As we saw with the recent ETH pump, when it moves, it drags many altcoins up with it. So it makes sense to watch ETH BTC closely to gauge where altcoins might be headed next. ETH BTC has been in a strong downtrend since mid-2022, consistently printing lower highs and lower lows. Recently, it bounced sharply from a major support zone around 0.23, which has been a strong base in previous cycles too. Right now, it is pushing towards the next key resistance at 0.30. If it can reclaim and close above 0.30, that would be a solid trend reversal signal and could kick off a proper alt season. However, if it gets rejected there, we might see it retest the lower support around 0.23 again. Overall, the current bounce is promising, but I would wait for a clear break above 0.30 to call the beginning of an alt season. Alright, now let's get into the part everyone's waiting for. The indicators I'm watching right now and when I plan to exit. Every major move in the crypto market could have been anticipated by just one key factor: global liquidity. We've talked about this plenty of times on the channel. When liquidity explodes, investors go risk-on and crypto pumps. When it contracts, the party's over. If we look at global money supply since 2014, it's been trending higher just like Bitcoin. But within that overall uptrend, there have been 3 clear periods where liquidity dropped. That is in 2014, 2018, and 2022. Each of those times, crypto took a big hit. That alone shows how important global liquidity is for crypto on higher timeframes. And as the asset class matures, even shorter timeframe correlations are getting sharper. You can see how Bitcoin has been tracking global liquidity almost perfectly since early 2024. So far, this trend has held, and I'll be keeping a close eye on it to make the best use of these moves. Now, before I talk about when I'll start taking profits, let's first nail down how to confirm that alt season has actually begun. For me, it comes down to a few key indicators, including some we already discussed earlier. The first major trigger is ETH BTC reclaiming and closing above 0.03. If ETH can push above that level and hold, it would signal a trend reversal and likely kick off a proper alt season. Another crucial part of the altcoin puzzle is understanding how Bitcoin dominance, Bitcoin itself, and altcoins interact. This little cheat sheet helps make sense of it. Ideally, you want Bitcoin to be rising while altcoins are pumping even harder. That's when Bitcoin dominance falls, and it usually kicks off a proper alt season. Right now, the setup looks somewhat similar. On the flip side, if Bitcoin starts dropping and dominance rises, it's brutal for alts. That's why it's so important to know if Bitcoin is fairly valued or if it's due for a heavy correction. One of the tools I use to keep track of this is the realized price projection. In simple terms, this indicator shows the average price at which all Bitcoins were last bought. It often acts as a floor because historically, Bitcoin doesn't stay below it for long. Then there's MVRV, which compares the current market price to this realized price to see if Bitcoin is overpriced or cheap. When MVRV is high, people are sitting on big profits. When it's low, Bitcoin is cheap compared to what holders paid. Now the realized price projection goes a step further. It uses a 10-year moving average of MVRV times realized price to estimate where Bitcoin's price should be based on historical trends. This is powerful because when you combine it with macro indicators like global liquidity, it can give highly accurate projections. For example, if liquidity is expanding and this projection is also trending up, that's a strong signal for a rally. It also acts as a sanity check. If macro models are calling for crazy targets but the realized price projection is much lower, you know those targets might be too aggressive. It's a great way to align on-chain data with macro trends for more confident trades. Right now, Bitcoin's price is well above the green line but still way below the purple line, which marks the top band, signaling a potential cycle peak. If it drops below the green band and doesn't recover within a month or so, I'd get cautious and check other indicators like the 200-week EMA for confluence and possible cycle tops. When it comes to alt season, it usually kicks off when Bitcoin's price runs well above the green band. We saw that happen both in March 2024 and November 2024. As always, I'll leave links to all these charts in the description. Moving on to when to go all in on altcoins, I'm closely watching the copper-to-gold ratio breakout window. Some people question whether this indicator really correlates with crypto. In that case, just look at its impact on Bitcoin dominance. It acts like an inverse indicator. When the copper-to-gold ratio goes up, Bitcoin dominance tends to go down and vice versa. This inverse relationship has held strong in previous cycles, making it a reliable confirmation tool for alt-season setups. We discussed in detail in a previous video how this ratio has accurately predicted past alt seasons. Once it breaks above its 20-week EMA and stays above the trendline for a couple of months, it confirms an alt season is underway. Right now, it's well above the 20-week EMA. We need it to hold above this level until at least 18th August 2025 to lock in that confirmation. You can learn more about this ratio in the video linked at the end of this one. Finally, when is the right time to take profit? There's no universal timeline that works for everyone, but here's an indicator trigger that screams take profit. That's when the alt-season index goes above 90 and stays there for a while. Ideally, I start scaling out once the index rises above 75. This strategy would have worked perfectly during both the March and November-December rallies in 2024 to lock in gains on many alts. You can also use this opportunity to exit stuck bags and rotate into projects you actually believe in. Just remember, greed is the biggest reason people miss out on taking profits. Stay realistic about your goals too. Turning 5K into 500K in one Altseason sounds amazing, but it's not something you should count on. If you get too emotionally attached to a project, it will end up controlling your trades, and that never ends well. Stay disciplined, take profits along the way, and keep your head clear. If you made it this far, don't forget to support the channel by liking and sharing this video with your friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.